Hasty broken swastika graffiti is basically the hieroglyphics of our time. I hope future archaeologists find these mysterious symbols and try to interpret their meaning. They come in all shapes and sizes. As I discussed earlier this week, they're very often poorly done, whether they're backwards or misshapen or even unrecognizable, to the point that I don't actually blame Sarah Silverman that much for thinking construction markings are part of this secret Reich territorialism. These symbols actually do look closer to swastikas than many of the other attempts. Apparently, we're supposed to believe that the Fourth Reich is led by a bunch of developmentally challenged SS agents who spend all of their time tagging random property for street cred, but never actually getting their organizational symbol quite right, despite all of their practice. As I've said many times, real Nazis don't cut corners on their swastikas. They tend to be pretty particular about their rules and presentation. So when we see these symbols on display in the news, there's a 99% chance we're dealing with one of two things. Either it's a self-serving hoax from someone who just doesn't have the time to go full Smollett but still wants to cash in on GoFundMe, or it's just the work of some mischievous kid looking to get a rise out of those of us who actually believe that spray paint or chalk markings are indicators of a forthcoming genocide. And if the case in question involves both a broken swastika and a dick drawing, you can be double sure you're looking at the work of a kid who's much more interested in shock value than he is in actually harming you. And today's story is one such example. Last Friday, news broke that a school playground in Queens had been vandalized, if you can call it that, with chalk swastikas drawn all over. School was out of session at the time, but nonetheless, the NYPD swiftly closed down the playground to investigate. New York City Councilwoman Karen Koslowitz took a visit to the park and tweeted, "I am horrified, disgusted, and nauseated, to say the least, of what I have witnessed today. Nazi imagery and anti-Semitic slurs were drawn on this playground. I was on scene today, and most of the imagery has been washed away, but enough is enough." I should also note there was a hammer and sickle in the chalk work, I guess drawn into existing lines of a basketball court to cross out the communist symbol. I'm not really sure. But no Jews and Hail Hitler, not Snow Hitler or Sleet Hitler, but Hail Hitler, were also scribbled just in case the swastikas didn't convey that message already. Whatever happened on this scene, a simple hose was not enough. The NYPD called in its special hate crimes unit to investigate further. And after a weeks-long investigation, our culprit is exactly who you'd expect would scribble offensive, misspelled chalkings on a grade school playground.
A 12-year-old boy under arrest tonight accused of scrawling anti-Semitic graffiti all over a playground in Queens. Swastikas and other offensive things were discovered last week, drawn in chalk on the ground outside PS 139 in Rego Park. The NYPD's hate crime unit made the arrest earlier today.
Well, thank God the NYPD takes its job seriously. I'm going to assume you've taken all the hardened criminals off the street if you have time to take the hardened schoolboys off the playground too. But I get it, you probably have to treat any potential threat seriously enough to investigate, and you can move on once you're satisfied that no such threat exists, but that's not what happened in this case. City and police officials actually congratulated themselves and celebrated the arrest of a child over chalk scribbles. Councilwoman Koslowitz says she's shocked that a 12-year-old committed this crime. It's completely unacceptable, and praise be upon the NYPD Hate Crimes Unit for eliminating this threat. And the Hate Crimes Unit says thanks. We did excellent work in apprehending this child for his anti-Semitic graffiti. The NYPD chief of detectives says, "Great job, hate crime team. No matter the face of hate, the NYPD and the community have zero tolerance." Really, no matter the face of the crime, you have the same policy. Can you name any other crime context in which that standard would apply to a child? And how can a child even be the face of hate? What is hate but a judgment? And what defines a child more than undeveloped judgment capacity? Is our paranoia about hate and supposed hate speech and wrongthink really so severe that we'll abandon that fundamental distinction between adults and children? And as if abandoning that distinction wasn't bad enough, the story gets worse. The child wasn't just arrested by police. He was actually charged, too.
The boy was charged with aggravated harassment and later released to the custody of his mother.
And since the offender is a minor, there's a lot of information we just don't know and likely never will, since the police and the justice system aren't going to release it. I can only assume that for an actual charge to be filed, this kid must have been smirking while doing this criminal chalking. The most serious offense a juvenile can commit. But pay attention to that specific charge. He was charged with harassment. You might think, oh, well, maybe the kid was trespassing, or maybe this technically counts as vandalism, even though the chalk washes right off. That's not what he was charged with. He was charged with harassment over the content of his speech. He's charged with making a threat, even though there's no specificity in that supposed threat, no immediacy in that supposed threat, no individual target of that supposed threat. I'm no lawyer, but I gotta think this is a major stretch of both New York state law and the First Amendment. In the law under which he's charged, there has to be a specific person or piece of property targeted by the illegal threat. There's no such specific target in this case. Under First Amendment case law, you can only criminalize incitement if it's both imminent and likely, inarguably not the case here. And the court has never held that a simple symbol is itself inherently a threat. That's a dangerous path to go down if certain shape arrangements can now become illegal. All that, and oh yeah, by the way, he's a damn kid. Cut him some slack. This story is silly, sure, but it is really revealing of just how twisted our perspectives on supposed hate and hate speech are becoming. We were taught as kids the mantra, "Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me." And now as adults, there are several of us with institutional power in the biggest city in the country, by the way, who not only say, yes, words can hurt me, but kids armed with words can hurt me, and those kids ought to be prosecuted aggressively in our justice system that's supposed to be predicated on protecting speech as our most fundamental right. So it's a standard that turns its back not only on our country's foundational values, it turns its back on how we raise and protect our kids too, and it's way more backwards than the worst garage door swastikas I've ever seen. Even if you think what this kid did is wrong, the best solution is clearly a simple discussion with parents, not aggressively prosecuting him like he's some adult criminal and then virtue signaling about how you're keeping your city safer, all the while a few dozen murder cases are collecting a few more days' dust unsolved on police station desks. If you gauge public safety by school playground chalk drawings, God help you if you ever visit a gas station bathroom stall. If you believe these things, tomorrow is the apocalypse every day. Thanks as always for listening and for supporting this channel always. Appreciate that thoughtful discussion down below and especially over on Twitter. That is at ML Christiansen. You're always welcome to come hang out and chat in my live streams. Those are linked down in the description. Looking forward to it. Goodbye.